The heavy oak doors of Windsor Castle's private study closed with a soft thud as King Charles III dismissed his final advisor of the evening. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 10, its deep chimes echoing through the dimly lit room. Charles walked slowly to his mahogany desk, his footsteps muffled by the thick Persian carpet that had witnessed countless royal decisions over the decades. On his desk lay a single document, its royal seal gleaming under the warm lamplight. The king's weathered hands trembled slightly as he picked up the ornate fountain pen that had belonged to his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. This was not just any ordinary evening, nor was this just any ordinary decision. What he was about to sign would change the course of the British monarchy forever. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had no idea that her name was being carefully inscribed on the most important document in recent royal history. She was at home in Adelaide Cottage, helping her children with their homework and planning the next day's royal engagements. Her husband, Prince William, was reviewing briefings for his upcoming environmental summit, completely unaware that his father was making a decision that would elevate his wife to an unprecedented position of power. The king paused, his pen hovering over the parchment. He thought about the conversations he had been having with his most trusted advisors over the past 6 months. The constitutional experts had assured him that what he was planning was entirely within his royal prerogative, though it had never been done in this manner before. The Archbishop of Canterbury had given his blessing, understanding the profound reasoning behind this extraordinary decision. Charles reflected on Catherine's journey from a middle-class girl from Berkshire to one of the most beloved members of the royal family. Her grace under pressure during the most challenging moments, her dedication to her royal duties, and her natural ability to connect with people from all walks of life had not gone unnoticed. More importantly, her steadfast support during his own health challenges and the various family crises had proven her unwavering commitment to the crown. The document before him contained a clause that would skip traditional succession protocols in a carefully planned scenario. While William would still inherit the throne as expected, Catherine would be granted unprecedented powers and responsibilities that would effectively make her queen, in all but name, during a crucial transition period. This secret decree would remain sealed until the precise moment it needed to be enacted. As Charles signed his name with deliberate strokes, he couldn't help but smile thinking about how the public would react. Catherine had already won the hearts of the British people and the Commonwealth nations. Her charity work, her role as a mother, and her dignified handling of media scrutiny had made her more popular than many senior royals. What the public didn't know was that behind the scenes, she had been quietly preparing for this moment, through intensive constitutional training and private meetings with government officials. The king sealed the document in a special envelope marked, with his personal cipher. Tomorrow it would be placed in the royal vault alongside other state secrets, waiting for the day when its contents would reshape the monarchy. He had chosen to act now while he was still in good health and clear mind, to ensure a smooth transition when the time came. Outside the castle walls, the British people went about their evening routines, completely unaware that their future queen had just been chosen in the most unconventional way possible. Social media buzzed with the usual royal commentary and speculation about upcoming events, but no one could have imagined the magnitude of what had just occurred in that quiet study. Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from William, asking if she had seen the beautiful sunset from their garden. She smiled and replied, stepping outside to admire the pink and orange hues painting the sky. Little did she know that this sunset marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, where she would play a role more significant than she had ever imagined. The secret was now locked away, known only to King Charles and a select few advisors who had sworn solemn oaths of confidentiality. The next phase of this extraordinary plan would require careful timing and strategic implementation, but for now, the most important step had been taken. The future of the British crown had been secured in the most surprising way possible, with Princess Catherine at its center. 3 weeks after the secret decree was signed, subtle changes began appearing in Catherine's official schedule that even the most observant royal watchers couldn't quite explain. Her private secretary, who had served the royal family for over 15 years, noticed that new types of meetings were being added to her calendar. These weren't the usual charity galas or school visits that typically filled her days. Catherine found herself in unprecedented situations that seemed oddly specific and important. She was invited to attend closed-door briefings with the Prime Minister that had never been part of her role before. When she questioned why she was being included in discussions about economic policy and international relations, she was told simply that the king wanted her to have a broader understanding of governmental affairs. The first major clue came during a state dinner with the President of France. Catherine noticed that she was seated in a position typically reserved for the Queen Consort, while Camilla was placed slightly further down the table. The French delegation seemed to have been briefed about this arrangement in advance, treating Catherine with a level of diplomatic deference that surprised even her. Royal protection officers began implementing new security protocols around Catherine that went beyond her usual arrangements. Her security detail was quietly expanded, and she noticed additional surveillance measures being put in place around her children's school and their private residence. When she asked about these changes, she was told they were routine updates. But something in the way her protection officer avoided eye contact made her suspect there was more to the story. William started noticing changes too, though he initially attributed them to his father's desire to modernize the monarchy. Catherine was being invited to Privy Council meetings, constitutional law lectures, and private audiences with senior judges. These weren't activities that typically interested her, yet she found herself strangely drawn to learning about the intricate workings of the British constitutional system. The media began picking up on subtle shifts in how Catherine was being presented in official communications. Palace press releases started referring to her with slightly different language, and her photographs were being positioned more prominently in official royal family portraits. Royal correspondents noticed these changes but couldn't quite put their finger on what was different. Catherine's mother, Carol Middleton, mentioned during a private family dinner that she had received several calls from journalists asking unusual questions about Catherine's background and preparation for royal duties. The questions seemed more probing than usual, as if the reporters were investigating something specific, but couldn't reveal what they were looking for. During a private visit to Balmoral Castle, Catherine discovered that she had been given access to parts of the royal library that contained sensitive historical documents about previous monarchs and constitutional crises. The librarian explained that King Charles had specifically requested that she be granted this access, saying it was important for her education about royal history. The most puzzling incident occurred during a routine visit to a children's hospital. The hospital director, who had hosted many royal visits over the years, treated Catherine with an unusual level of formality and kept referring to future plans that seemed to assume she would have greater influence over royal patronages and charitable foundations. Catherine's lady-in-waiting, who had been with her for several years, privately expressed confusion about the changing dynamics. She mentioned that other members of the royal household staff had been asking her questions about Catherine's preferences and working style, as if they were preparing for significant changes in how the royal household would be organized. Late one evening, as Catherine was reviewing briefing papers that had become surprisingly complex and governmental in nature, she decided to confront William about what was happening. She had always been direct in their relationship, and the growing mystery around her changing role was beginning to concern her. William's response was carefully measured, but Catherine could tell he was holding back information. He assured her that everything was part of the king's plan to better prepare the younger generation of royals for future responsibilities, but his explanation felt incomplete and rehearsed. The final piece of the puzzle came when Catherine accidentally overheard a phone conversation between King Charles and the Archbishop of Canterbury. She had arrived early for a private lunch at Clarence House and was waiting in an adjacent room. When she heard her name mentioned several times in the context of constitutional precedents and ceremonial preparations, that night, Catherine lay awake thinking about all the strange occurrences of the past few weeks. The additional responsibilities, the unusual meetings, the heightened security, and the shifting dynamics all pointed to something significant happening behind the scenes. She had a growing suspicion that her role in the royal family was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine, but the full scope of what was planned remained tantalizingly out of reach. The truth came to light in the most unexpected way possible, through a conversation Catherine was never meant to overhear. She had arrived at Buckingham Palace for what she believed was a routine meeting about her upcoming charity engagements. But traffic delays meant she arrived 30 minutes earlier than expected. The palace staff, not expecting her arrival, directed her to wait in the blue drawing room while they notified the king's private secretary of her early presence. As Catherine sat admiring the room's magnificent portraits, she heard voices approaching from the adjacent corridor. Recognizing her father-in-law's distinctive voice, she moved toward the partially open door to greet him. What she heard instead made her freeze in place. King Charles was speaking with Sir Clive Alderton, his private secretary, and the conversation was entirely about her. The king was discussing the timeline for what he called the transition, and expressing his satisfaction with how well Catherine had adapted to her enhanced responsibilities. Without realizing their true significance, Catherine's heart raced as she heard Charles mention the sealed decree and his decision to formalize her role as his chosen successor for practical governance while William focused on his environmental initiatives. The king explained that the constitutional experts had confirmed that his plan was legally sound and that the Prime Minister had been briefed and was supportive of the arrangement. The most shocking revelation came when Charles mentioned that Catherine would effectively become queen in all but name during a planned transition period that would begin within the next 6 months. He spoke about how the public's love for Catherine would help modernize the monarchy and ensure its continued relevance in the 21st century. Catherine felt dizzy as she processed what she was hearing. The conversation revealed that this wasn't just about additional responsibilities or enhanced roles. The king had made a fundamental decision about the future of the crown that would place her at its very center, bypassing traditional expectations about how royal succession worked. Sir Clive's voice carried a note of concern as he mentioned the potential constitutional challenges and media reaction when the news eventually became public. Charles responded with confidence, explaining that every legal aspect had been carefully considered and that the timing of the announcement would be crucial to its success. The conversation took an even more surprising turn when Charles revealed that several Commonwealth leaders had already been quietly briefed about the arrangement. During recent diplomatic visits, the positive reaction from these discussions had reinforced his belief that Catherine's elevation would strengthen the monarchy's position globally. Catherine learned that her recent intensive training in constitutional law and governmental procedures hadn't been coincidental. A team of experts had been carefully preparing her for responsibilities that would far exceed anything previously expected of a Princess of Wales. The king had been orchestrating a comprehensive preparation program while keeping its ultimate purpose secret. The most emotional moment came when Charles spoke about his own health considerations and his desire to ensure the monarchy's stability during any potential future challenges. He expressed deep admiration for Catherine's strength, intelligence, and natural leadership abilities, saying he had never been more confident about any decision in his reign. As the voices moved away down the corridor, Catherine remained motionless, trying to process the magnitude of what she had discovered. Everything that had seemed strange and unexplained over the past weeks now made perfect sense. The enhanced security, the unusual meetings, the constitutional training, and the subtle changes in how she was being treated all pointed to this extraordinary plan. When King Charles entered the blue drawing room 20 minutes later, he found Catherine sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap, wearing an expression that immediately told him something significant had happened. Their eyes met, and in that moment, both realized that the carefully maintained secret was no longer a secret. The king's initial surprise quickly gave way to a gentle smile. He had always planned to have this conversation with Catherine eventually, though he had hoped to control the timing more carefully. Seeing her calm composure despite what must have been a shocking discovery, he felt even more confident in his choice. Catherine's first words were typically direct and practical. She asked about William's knowledge of the plan and whether their children would be affected by this dramatic change in their family's future. Her immediate concern for her family's well-being, even in the face of such momentous news, reinforced Charles's belief in her character. The king sat beside her and began explaining the full scope of his vision. He spoke about the monarchy's need to evolve, Catherine's unique qualifications for leadership, and his belief that the British people would embrace this unconventional but carefully considered approach to royal succession. As their conversation continued, Catherine realized that this wasn't just about her becoming queen eventually. This was about transforming the very nature of how the monarchy operated, with her playing a central role in shaping its future. The magnitude of the responsibility was overwhelming, but she also felt a growing sense of purpose and determination. The secret was finally out, at least between them, but Catherine understood that the real challenge would come when this extraordinary plan became public knowledge. The reaction from the media, the public, and even other members of the royal family would determine whether this bold vision for the monarchy's future would succeed or create unprecedented controversy. Once Catherine knew the truth, everything changed overnight. The next morning, she found herself in the most extraordinary meeting of her life, sitting in a secure room at Clarence House with King Charles, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Lord Chamberlain, and 3 constitutional law professors from Oxford University. The group had been secretly meeting for months, planning every detail of what they were calling Operation Succession. Catherine learned that this wasn't a hasty decision, but a carefully crafted plan that had been developing since shortly after Charles became king. Every aspect had been analyzed, from constitutional precedents to public opinion research. Professor Margaret Thornton, the leading constitutional expert, explained to Catherine that the king's plan was entirely legal under current British law. The monarch had the authority to delegate significant powers to chosen representatives, and with proper parliamentary consultation, these arrangements could be formalized in ways that had never been attempted before. Catherine discovered that public opinion polls had been secretly conducted to gauge how the British people might react to her taking on expanded leadership roles. The results were overwhelmingly positive, with approval ratings higher than any royal family member had achieved in decades. Her handling of various crises and her genuine connection with ordinary people had made her more trusted than many elected politicians. The Archbishop revealed that religious leaders across the Commonwealth had been quietly consulted about the theological implications of Catherine's enhanced role. The consensus was that her strong faith, charitable work, and moral character made her an ideal candidate for expanded spiritual leadership within the monarchy's traditional role as head of the Church of England. Over the following weeks, Catherine's education intensified dramatically. She began receiving daily briefings on international relations, economic policy, and constitutional law from the same experts who advised the Prime Minister. Her schedule was restructured to include intensive sessions with former diplomats, judges, and senior civil servants. The most challenging aspect was learning about the monarchy's complex relationship with the governments of Commonwealth nations. Catherine had to understand not just British constitutional law, but the intricate ways the Crown functioned in countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Each nation had different expectations and constitutional arrangements that would be affected by her new role. William's reaction, when he was finally fully briefed, surprised everyone. Rather than feeling bypassed or diminished, he expressed relief and enthusiasm about the arrangement. He had always felt the weight of future kingship, and the opportunity to focus on his environmental work while Catherine handled other aspects of royal leadership appealed to him greatly. Their children's preparation became a delicate balancing act. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis needed to understand that their mother's role was changing significantly, but without overwhelming them with the full implications. Child psychologists were consulted to ensure the transition would be as smooth as possible for the young family. Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, were brought into the secret during a private weekend at Sandringham. Their initial shock gave way to pride and concern in equal measure. They understood the honor being bestowed on their daughter, but they also worried about the enormous pressure and scrutiny that would come with such an unprecedented role. The logistical preparations were staggering in their complexity. Catherine's security arrangements had to be completely redesigned to reflect her future status. New communication systems were installed, additional staff were vetted and hired, and protocols were developed for everything from state visits to emergency procedures. Royal residences required modifications to accommodate Catherine's expanded role. Private offices were renovated to include secure meeting rooms and communication facilities, that would allow her to conduct high-level governmental and diplomatic business. The changes were made quietly, disguised as routine maintenance and modernization projects. Catherine's wardrobe underwent a subtle but significant transformation. Her personal stylist worked with designers to create a collection of formal attire, appropriate for the enhanced ceremonial duties she would soon undertake. Everything from state dinner gowns to military-style uniforms for official ceremonies had to be carefully planned and fitted. The media management strategy required unprecedented coordination between palace communications teams and government press offices. Plans were developed for controlling information flow, managing public expectations, and responding to the inevitable questions and criticisms that would arise when the news broke. International diplomatic preparations involved briefing key allied nations about the upcoming changes. Ambassadors from major Commonwealth countries and strategic partners were given confidential briefings to ensure smooth diplomatic transitions. When Catherine's new role became official, Catherine's personal preparation included working with speech therapists to enhance her public speaking abilities, etiquette experts to refine her ceremonial skills, and historians to deepen her understanding of royal traditions and precedents. Every aspect of her public persona was carefully analyzed and strengthened. The most intense preparation involved simulated scenarios where Catherine had to make decisions that a monarch might face during constitutional crises, international conflicts, or national emergencies. These exercises, conducted with former government ministers and military leaders, tested her judgment and decision-making abilities under pressure. As the weeks passed, Catherine began to feel the weight of her future responsibilities, but also a growing confidence in her ability to fulfill them. The comprehensive preparation was transforming her from a popular princess into a leader ready to reshape the British monarchy for the modern era. The first crack in the carefully maintained secrecy came from an unexpected source. Lady Margaret Whitmore, a longtime palace staff member who had served 3 generations of royals, accidentally saw a classified document that had been left on a printer in the private secretary's office. The document contained references to Queen Catherine and detailed protocols for her coronation ceremony. Lady Margaret, who was known for her discretion and loyalty, was so shocked by what she read that she immediately brought the document to the attention of Sir Clive Alderton. However, the damage was already done. 2 junior staff members had also glimpsed the papers, and despite signing additional confidentiality agreements, rumors began circulating. Within the palace walls, the situation became more complicated when a security camera captured one of the staff members photographing the document with their personal phone before it was secured. Although the phone was immediately confiscated and the images deleted, palace security experts couldn't be certain that the information hadn't been transmitted elsewhere. Within days, whispers reached the ears of royal correspondents who had cultivated sources within the palace staff over many years. Rebecca Morrison, a veteran royal reporter for The Telegraph, received a mysterious phone call from someone claiming to have inside information about a major announcement involving Princess Catherine that would change everything. Rebecca's initial skepticism gave way to serious investigation when multiple independent sources began hinting at the same story. She noticed that Catherine's recent public appearances showed subtle changes in protocol and ceremonial treatment that experienced royal watchers found unusual but couldn't quite explain. The first public hint appeared in an innocuous social media post by a former palace employee who wrote about witnessing preparations for something extraordinary involving the Princess of Wales. While the post was quickly deleted, several royal fan accounts had already shared screenshots, leading to widespread speculation online. Royal betting shops noticed an unusual surge in wagers related to Catherine receiving new titles or roles within the monarchy. The pattern was so distinct that it caught the attention of gambling industry analysts, who reported their findings to financial journalists covering royal-related business activities. The pressure intensified when a foreign diplomatic source, speaking on condition of anonymity, told an international news agency that recent briefings about the British royal family had included references to Catherine's enhanced constitutional role. The BDO story was picked up by several European newspapers before Palace officials could respond. Catherine found herself under more intense media scrutiny than usual, with photographers and reporters analyzing every detail of her public appearances, for clues about the rumored changes. Her body language, clothing choices, and interactions with other royal family members were dissected for hidden meanings. The situation reached a critical point when a maintenance worker at Buckingham Palace told his brother about overhearing conversations regarding major changes to the line of succession. The brother, who worked for a tabloid newspaper, immediately contacted his editors with the story, though they initially treated it as unreliable gossip. Palace communications teams went into crisis mode, developing strategies to either confirm or deny the rumors while protecting the integrity of the king's original plan. Emergency meetings were held to assess whether the timeline for the announcement needed to be accelerated or whether the rumors could still be contained. Catherine experienced the stress of living under intense speculation while being unable to address the rumors directly. Every public appearance became a careful balancing act of maintaining normalcy while the media searched for confirmation of the extraordinary claims circulating in royal circles. The breaking point came when a respected constitutional expert at Cambridge University was approached by a journalist about theoretical scenarios involving non-traditional royal succession arrangements. Her academic discussion of the legal possibilities was interpreted as confirmation that such plans were actively being considered. William found himself fielding carefully worded questions from longtime friends and colleagues who had heard various versions of the rumors. His attempts to deflect these inquiries only fueled more speculation about what the royal family might be planning behind closed doors. King Charles faced the difficult decision of whether to accelerate his timeline or attempt to suppress the growing media attention. The longer the rumors circulated without official response, the more elaborate and inaccurate they became, threatening to undermine the carefully planned announcement strategy. The final straw came when a satirical television program aired a segment joking about Catherine becoming queen ahead of schedule. While presented as comedy, the segment demonstrated that the rumors had reached mainstream public consciousness and could no longer be ignored or dismissed. Palace officials realized that they were losing control of the narrative and that continued silence would only feed more speculation. The carefully orchestrated revelation plan that had been months in the making would need to be abandoned in favor of a more immediate response to the growing media storm. Catherine understood that her life was about to change dramatically once again. But this time the change would be completely public. The secret that had been so carefully guarded was about to become headline news around the world, and she would need to be prepared for unprecedented scrutiny and analysis of every aspect of the king's extraordinary decision. The official announcement came at exactly 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, delivered simultaneously to news organizations around the world. King Charles had decided that a formal, dignified revelation would be better than allowing speculation and rumors to continue damaging the monarchy's reputation and Catherine's privacy. The statement, released from Buckingham Palace, was carefully worded but unmistakably clear. His Majesty King Charles III had signed a constitutional decree granting Princess Catherine unprecedented powers and responsibilities that would effectively make her co-sovereign during a planned transition period, with full royal prerogatives in matters of state. The reaction was immediate and explosive. News channels across the globe interrupted their regular programming to cover what many commentators called the most significant constitutional change in British history since the abdication crisis of 1936. The story dominated social media within minutes, with hashtags about Catherine and the monarchy trending worldwide. British political leaders found themselves scrambling to respond to a development that had caught Westminster completely off guard. The Prime Minister, who had been privately briefed weeks earlier, issued a carefully prepared statement supporting the King's decision and emphasizing the constitutional legitimacy of the arrangement. Opposition politicians expressed a mixture of shock, concern, and cautious support. While some questioned the precedent being set, others praised the modernization of the monarchy and Catherine's qualifications for expanded leadership roles. The Speaker of the House of Commons announced that Parliament would hold emergency sessions to discuss the constitutional implications. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive, though not unanimous. Polling conducted throughout the day showed approval ratings above 70%, with particularly strong support among younger demographics and women. Catherine's popularity and perceived competence had prepared the ground for acceptance of this unconventional arrangement. International responses varied significantly. Commonwealth nations generally expressed support, with several prime ministers praising Catherine's diplomatic skills and suggesting the change would strengthen ties with Britain. European Union leaders offered polite congratulations while privately analyzing what this might mean for future negotiations. The media coverage was intense and comprehensive, with royal experts, constitutional lawyers, and political analysts providing commentary on every aspect of the announcement. Television networks created special programming to explain the historical context and potential implications of the king's decision. Catherine's first public appearance after the announcement was at a previously scheduled children's hospital visit. The crowd that gathered was larger and more enthusiastic than usual, with many people shouting congratulations and expressing excitement about her new role. Her gracious handling of the attention was widely praised in subsequent news coverage. Behind the scenes, Catherine was dealing with a flood of congratulations, requests for interviews, and invitations from organizations worldwide. Her private secretary worked around the clock to manage the unprecedented volume of communication while maintaining some semblance of normal royal scheduling. The Church of England's response was particularly important given Catherine's future role as a leader within the religious establishment. The Archbishop of Canterbury's public blessing of the arrangement helped legitimize the decision among faith communities and address potential theological concerns about the unconventional succession. Legal challenges emerged within days, with several constitutional law societies and Republican organizations announcing their intention to question the legality of the king's decree in court. However, leading legal experts generally agreed that the monarch's prerogative powers made such challenges unlikely to succeed. Catherine's family experienced intense media attention as reporters sought reactions and background information. The Middleton family handled the scrutiny with their characteristic dignity, issuing a brief statement expressing pride in Catherine while requesting privacy during the adjustment period. Royal family dynamics became a subject of intense speculation, with particular attention paid to how other senior royals were adapting to Catherine's elevated status. Public appearances were analyzed for signs of tension or support, though most family members maintained their usual professional demeanor. The financial markets reacted positively to the news, with tourism-related stocks rising on expectations that Catherine's enhanced profile would increase international interest in Britain. Currency markets showed stability, suggesting investor confidence in the political and constitutional systems. International diplomatic protocols required immediate updates to reflect Catherine's new status. Embassies worldwide received guidance on proper etiquette and precedents for future interactions, while ceremonial departments began planning for state visits and official functions. Academic institutions announced new courses and research projects focused on studying this unique constitutional arrangement. Universities with royal studies programs found themselves overwhelmed with applications from scholars wanting to analyze this unprecedented development in monarchical governance. The announcement's timing, just before the summer season of royal engagements, meant that Catherine's first events in her new role would be highly visible public occasions. Palace planners worked frantically to adjust protocols and ceremonial arrangements to reflect her enhanced status appropriately. As the initial shock of the announcement began to settle, attention turned to the practical implications of Catherine's new role. Questions about her specific powers, the timeline for full implementation, and the long-term impact on the monarchy's structure dominated political and media discussions. Catherine herself remained focused on the responsibilities ahead, understanding that the success of this bold experiment in royal governance would depend largely on her performance in the coming months. The world was watching, and she was determined to prove that King Charles's extraordinary faith in her abilities was well-founded. 6 months after the world-changing announcement, Catherine stood in the throne room of Buckingham Palace wearing a specially created crown that symbolized her unique position in British history. The ceremony taking place was unlike any seen before, combining traditional coronation elements with modern constitutional innovations that reflected her unprecedented role. The guest list included heads of state from around the world, all eager to witness this historic moment and establish diplomatic relationships with Britain's new co-sovereign. The ceremony was broadcast live to over 2 billion viewers worldwide, making it one of the most watched royal events in history. Catherine's transformation had been remarkable to observe. The woman who had once been known primarily as William's wife and a dedicated mother had evolved into a confident leader whose decisions carried the weight of constitutional authority. Her daily schedule now included briefings with intelligence services, meetings with foreign ambassadors, and consultations with parliamentary leaders. The British public had embraced the change more enthusiastically than anyone had predicted. Catherine's approval ratings remained consistently above 80%, and her approaches to modern governance had attracted international attention as a model for contemporary monarchy. Her ability to connect with people from all backgrounds while maintaining royal dignity had proven perfect for the role. William's role had also evolved in ways that surprised many observers. Rather than being overshadowed by his wife's elevation, he had found new purpose in environmental leadership and sustainable development initiatives. The arrangement had allowed him to pursue his passions while supporting Catherine's constitutional responsibilities, creating a partnership that strengthened both their individual contributions. Their children had adapted to their mother's new status with remarkable resilience. Prince George, now understanding that his own path to kingship might be different from previous generations, had shown increased interest in constitutional studies. Princess Charlotte had become fascinated with diplomacy, often asking detailed questions about the foreign dignitaries her mother met. Prince Louis, still young, simply enjoyed the exciting new routines that came with having a mother who was effectively queen. The constitutional implications of Catherine's role continued to evolve through practical experience and legal precedents. Parliament had passed legislation formally recognizing her authority in specific areas, while maintaining the traditional framework of British democracy. The arrangement had actually strengthened parliamentary democracy by creating clearer distinctions between ceremonial and governmental functions. International relationships had been transformed by Catherine's diplomatic skills and global appeal. Commonwealth nations reported stronger ties with Britain than they had experienced in decades, while European relationships had improved, significantly due to Catherine's personal connections with other royal families and political leaders. The modernization of royal protocols under Catherine's influence had attracted younger generations to take interest in the monarchy for the first time in years. Social media engagement with royal activities had increased dramatically, and charitable organizations associated with the royal family reported record levels of support and volunteer participation. Economic benefits from Catherine's elevated profile exceeded all projections. Tourism to Britain had increased by 30%, with visitors specifically citing their desire to see the sights associated with the new queen's activities. The Catherine effect on fashion, culture, and lifestyle trends had created billions in economic value for British businesses. Legal challenges to the arrangement had been definitively resolved in Catherine's favor by the Supreme Court, which ruled that the king's constitutional prerogatives clearly supported the innovative succession arrangement. The decision had strengthened, rather than weakened, constitutional monarchy by demonstrating its flexibility and relevance to modern governance. Catherine's daily life had settled into a rhythm that balanced her enormous responsibilities with her commitment to family life. Early morning briefings on international affairs were followed by school drop-offs, while evening state functions were balanced with bedtime stories. The integration of maternal duties with royal leadership had created a new model for modern monarchy. The success of the arrangement had inspired discussions in other constitutional monarchies about similar innovations. Several countries had sent delegations to study the British model, while constitutional experts worldwide analyzed the precedents being established for future monarchical evolution. Media coverage had evolved from initial sensationalism to serious analysis of governance and leadership. Catherine's monthly press conferences, the innovation she had introduced, provided transparency about royal decision-making while maintaining appropriate constitutional boundaries. Her direct communication style had set new standards for royal public engagement. As Catherine prepared for her first state visit as co-sovereign, this time to Canada, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. The scared young woman who had married into the royal family, had become a confident leader whose influence extended far beyond Britain's borders. King Charles watched his daughter-in-law's success with deep satisfaction, knowing that his bold decision had not only secured the monarchy's future, but had also unleashed Catherine's remarkable potential for leadership. The secret decree that had once seemed so risky had become the foundation for the most successful period of modern royal history. The new era of British monarchy that had begun with a secret signature in a quiet study had transformed into a global example of how traditional institutions could evolve to meet contemporary challenges. Catherine's reign as co-sovereign had proven that innovation and tradition could combine to create something more powerful than either could achieve alone.